After 3 different winners in the opening 3 races, an unpredictable MotoGP season arrives in Texas for round 4. Who will sit on the throne as the king of COTA? It's time to race in MotoGP. So the 5.5-kilometre Circuit of the Americas on the calendar in the World Championship since 2013. 11 left turns, 9 right corners, 20 corners in layout, a lot of undulation, sweeping, fast change of direction, one of the most popular circuits on the 21-round World Championship calendar. And the all-time lap record set yesterday by Jorge Martin on his way to pole position. The best race lap, a 2:03.575, held by the king of COTA, Marc Marquez. The favourite overtaking spots at the end of the back straight into turn 12. This was Pecco Bagnaia on Jorge Martin for the final podium place last year. Coming up shortly then in MotoGP, poleman Jorge Martin hones in on Ducati's first win at COTA. The Battle of Bologna looms as Ducati lock out the top 5 places on the grid. Marc Marquez seeks to retain his crown as the undisputed king of COTA. And Argentina winner Aleix Espargaro has to fight his way through from row 5. A very good afternoon to you and welcome back to the magnificent, the splendid Circuit of the Americas. A short 20-minute drive away from the vibrant downtown Austin, the self-styled live music capital of the world. Who will be calling the tune in the 20-lap MotoGP race coming up in just over half an hour's time? With temperatures going up here in this part of the world in Texas, although it's a very blustery day as we get set for the 4th round of an intriguing and unpredictable 2022 MotoGP World Championship. 9 different riders on the first 3 podiums of the season, 3 different race winners, 3 different manufacturers have already taken wins in our first 3 Grand Prix of the season. It'll be buzzing in downtown Austin a little bit later on tonight. Who will be celebrating with 25 points in this MotoGP race in their pocket? There you can see the American flags and the Texan state flag fluttering away in the distance. It is windy, probably the windiest conditions we've had of the weekend so far. And it was a fantastic day yesterday for Ducati, a super Saturday for Saturday's superstar, Jorge Martin. He starts on pole position on the Pramac Ducati, breaking Marc Marquez's 7-year-old all-time lap record with a stunning 2:02.03. It's a 4th consecutive front row start for Jorge Martin in 2022, but that did not tell anything like half of the full story, Lewis, with a fantastic Saturday for the Bologna factory Ducati.
Martin may well be the king of qualifying, but it was the Bologna Bullets who certainly dominated on Saturday afternoon. They have locked out the top 5 positions on the grid for this afternoon's Grand Prix of the Americas. This is a man who we would normally expect to be occupying the front row of the grid in Austin. Not so for Marc Marquez, who hasn't enjoyed the same level of confidence that we'd normally see from him here at the Circuit of the Americas for a couple of reasons. One, of course, he's missed the last couple of races and the last full weekend in Argentina after the return of the Diplopia following that big high side in warm-up at the Indonesian Grand Prix, but also just a general lack of track time on this 2022 Honda. He's not fully happy with it just yet. If he is going to maintain his crown as the king of COTA, he's certainly going to have to earn it this afternoon. Marc Marquez goes from 9th on the grid.
Great to have the Sheriff back in town, though. The 29-year-old Spaniard, fresh off the back of what he described as the worst Grand Prix of his career. 4 big crashes in Mandalika. Of course, missed that Indonesian Grand Prix with concussion, and as Lewis mentioned, a return of the double vision issues ruled him out last weekend in Argentina, but he is back. And can he finally get that elusive 100th Premier Class podium? An awful lot of support in this part of the world for Marc Marquez there. The fans are ready. We're all ready. What about the fortunes and the prospects of the reigning world champion Fabio Quartararo, who did an excellent job yesterday to rescue a place on the second and 6th spot despite a very fast crash, a heavy tumble at turn 19 in that second qualifying session. The problem for Fabio Quartararo is there are 5 super fast Ducatis directly ahead of him. He needs to be super aggressive on that first lap, does Fabio Quartararo. Likewise, Marquez coming from the back of that third row as Fabio Quartararo tries to find his way to the top step of the podium for the first time in a long time. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone last year, the last time we saw the world champ sopping Prosecco from the top step.
If you look at the qualifying 2 session yesterday, Fabio Quartararo, it may not surprise you to hear, was the slowest of those riders in the speed traps, 336.4 kilometers an hour. That is 13 clicks slower than Enea Bastianini went through that same speed trap. Bastianini has tended to be the fastest by quite a margin, actually, through that speed trap through this weekend. So there'll be a few nerves down at the Monster Energy Yamaha pit on the opening lap of this Grand Prix. If Fabio Quartararo can make early ground, he's certainly going to have to get his elbows out and brake as late as he dares into turn 12 on the opening lap.
Well, as we mentioned, it's been a wildly unpredictable start to 2022. We just saw there a man who's been the chief benefactor, Aleix Espargaro on the factory Aprilia, our current MotoGP World Championship leader. 45 points from a possible 75 for the 32-year-old Aprilia rider, creating history 7 days ago in South America at the Termatrio Hondo circuit in Argentina. Aprilia's first win in the 4-stroke era, their first win in the Premier Class, and Aleix Espargaro defends a 7-point lead over Brad Binder going into this 20-lap battle here this afternoon. We also just saw there briefly Jack Miller. Congratulations to him, putting the bitter disappointment of Argentina behind him. 14th place, not a single overtake from the Aussie last weekend. He goes in the middle of that front row in second. And
Enea Bastianini starts from the middle of the second row in 5th. Here's a rider who certainly has caught the attention of his rivals, including Pecco Bagnaia here, who starts from the outside of the front row. He's back in business this weekend after certainly a rough Saturday in Argentina, although he did salvage it a little bit in the Grand Prix itself. Bastianini certainly appears to have the race pace, and crucially in the closing stage of this Grand Prix, we expect him to have the rear tyre life. Many are expected to go for the soft rear tyre in this Grand Prix, and that could well play into Enea Bastianini's hands if he's able to manage that through the 20 laps that are ahead of us.
We just saw there the Ducati Island, which sits right on the outside of the main straight, the 41-metre climb up to the first corner. The Ducati fans were treated to some show here yesterday at the Horsepower Rodeo. The top 5, as you mentioned, on the grid, locked out by Ducati for the first time in their Premier Class history. What can Alex Rins and his factory Suzuki teammate Joan Mir manage from the back of that third row of the grid? Rins did fight his way through from 7th 7 days ago to the podium in Argentina, and of course he remains the only man in MotoGP that has finished on the top step of the podium other than the great Marc Marquez here in Kota.
Tall order ahead of Maverick Viñales today. He looks pretty happy and chilled with life, doesn't he, on screen at the moment? But Maverick Viñales has to go from 14th on the grid. He starts alongside his teammate, the World Championship leader, Aleix Espargaro. Aprilia certainly feel as if they've got better pace than that in the race. They just weren't able to switch those soft tyres on for a qualifying lap yesterday. Both of them had to go through Q1, and that is so often the case in MotoGP these days. There are so many strong riders that often find themselves in Q1. The Aprilia riders found themselves on the 5th row, but both of them feel confident that with the pace they've got, a top 6 finish isn't beyond them today.
We just saw there, it's a momentous milestone day in the history of the MotoGP World Championship. The racing together collaboration between Dorna Sports, the FIM, IRTA and the MSMA. It all started 30 years ago, back in 1992, and today we celebrate the 500th Grand Prix of that special and unique relationship, a relationship which has turned this current MotoGP World Championship into arguably the most competitive, technically, and certainly most competitive rider-wise that we've probably ever seen in history. And of course, it's another landmark day as well for MotoGP. It's the 20th anniversary of the launch and liftoff for the first four-stroke race. Valentino Rossi, the Italian legend and icon, won that one at Suzuka way back in 2002. So many celebrations to take place here today at the Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas.
Pit lane open then. It'll be open for 5 minutes for the riders to get out on track and get themselves round to the grid. Here's Pol Espargaro, had certainly a rough Friday, feeling very under the weather during free practice Friday. By the end of FP2, he just had no energy left whatsoever. Was feeling much better yesterday and was able to get that Repsol Honda into qualifying too. He starts from 12th on the grid today, 1 row behind this man, his teammate Marc Marquez, the king of Kota, and he is going to be box office on the first lap of this Grand Prix. He certainly does appear to have the pace to challenge for the victory. Whether he has the time to overtake the riders in front of him is another matter. He's certainly going to have to be aggressive on the opening lap of this Grand Prix.
There's Jack Miller and Enea Bastianini. They're obviously in the zone and revved up and ready to go here in Kota. Jack Miller's first front row start of 2022 coming up very shortly. Here's the crucial Michelin tyre allocation. Thankfully, all weekend we've not needed the rain tyres. Now, pre-race, it seemed like the pre-race pick was going to be the hard front, soft rear tyre when Simon Crafar spoke to Michelin Motorsport boss Piero Talamasso in the warm-up. 3 or 4 riders, though, potentially wondering whether they could make the medium work over the longer race distance. So we'll find out. The provisional Michelin tyre sheet should be with us very shortly here in the commentary box, but it looked like the majority pick was going to be the hard front, soft rear for this 20-lap Texan tussle.
That certainly appears to be the combination. Jorge Martin then, your pole sitter, not outside the top 2 yet in qualifying sessions so far this year, which certainly seemed unlikely early on yesterday. Of course, he had a crash late in free practice 3, which left him having to go the indirect route to pole position by going through Q1. Was able to top that Q1 session and get himself into the fight for pole position. Whether he has the pace necessarily to go with the other Ducatis who are around him on the grid, it remains to be seen. But we weren't sure whether Martin would have the pace to stick around at the front last time out in Argentina, and we saw how much trouble Aleix Espargaro had getting past the young Spaniard. Once he's up there at the front, Jorge Martin is a very difficult rider to dislodge. So
some early information filtering through to us from Michelin, and it is, as we suspected, the majority pick is the hard front tyre. Every rider at the moment coming to the grid for this 20-lap Kota battle with the hard front tyre. The only deviations are Tech 3 KTM's Raul Fernandez, who's gone for the medium rear tyre, and Miguel Oliveira, who's had a shocking weekend so far, the Mandalika winner. He has the medium rear tyre. Now, will that change as the riders go out on this sighting lap? Temperature is increasing, but it's very windy, very breezy around this part of Texas right now. But our only deviations at the moment in terms of rear tyre choice, Raul Fernandez and Miguel Oliveira, the KTM pairing, they're going for the medium rear tyre, or they're at least coming to the grid with the medium rear tyre fitted to their RC16s. Very little to lose, I suppose, for the KTMs down the back of the grid. They've had a disastrous weekend. The highest of them is Brad Binder, who starts in 17th on the grid. They've just not been quick at any stage of this weekend. Miguel Oliveira as the most exaggerated example of that. He starts way down the grid in 20th, having had a poor Friday where he was the slowest rider on track altogether during Friday practice, struggling on braking, struggling on entry. He had massive vibrations on new tyres as well. Just about anything that could have gone wrong for Miguel Oliveira did go wrong, and it gives you a prime example of how competitive and how dramatically the fluctuations can be in MotoGP. Just 2 Grand Prix ago in the wet conditions in Indonesia, Miguel Oliveira was taking an accomplished dominant victory. We haven't seen him anything close to that level since. They've turned that KTM upside down, left, right. They just have not been able to find any kind of front-end confidence, front-end feeling on the quartet of KTMs. This is the beautiful, stunning scene of downtown Austin, one of our most popular stops on our 21-round World Championship schedule. A population of just under 1 million. It is known, as we mentioned, as the live music capital of the world. The whole paddock's going to be partying in downtown Austin tonight. Who's going to wake up with the biggest headaches, though, in MotoGP tomorrow morning as we head home from this 4th round of the World Championship? if you've got a bucket list, ladies and gentlemen, if you're at home thinking, if there's one overseas Grand Prix I'd love to go to, well, we thoroughly recommend this Austin track, the Circuit of the Americas, nestled, as we said, about a 20-minute drive away from the vibrant, buzzing atmosphere of downtown Austin, an atmosphere which has now shifted from downtown, thankfully, to the hillsides here of this magnificent Circuit of the Americas. The pressure building up here now as we get set for this 20-lap Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas.
This is how the grid lines up then. Jorge Martin on pole position with 4 Ducatis right behind him. Jack Miller and Pecco Bagnaia completing the front row with Zarco, Bastianini and the reigning world champion Fabio Quartararo starting from the tail of row 2 in 6th. The Suzukis will once again have to make their ground up from row 3. They have Marc Marquez for company. Can the King of Kota retain his crown from 9th? He has Takaki Nakagami behind him in 10th, ahead of Luca Marini and Paul Espargaro, who made his way through Q1 yesterday. Aleix Espargaro not so lucky. He starts 13th. The championship leader has work to do. His teammate Maverick Vinales joins him on row 5. Andrea Dovizioso, an improved weekend for him. He's in 15th, ahead of Marco Bezzecchi in 16th. The top rookie Brad Binder looking to salvage something for KTM, as he so often does on a Sunday. He starts in 17th position, just ahead of Fabio Di Gianantonio. Franco Morbidelli's had a poor weekend, much like Miguel Oliveira. They're together on row 7, along with Ralph Fernandez, who crashed this morning in warm-up. Remy Gardner starts 22nd, Alex Marquez in 23rd, and Darren Binder, who's had 3 crashes this weekend, starts 24th.
Well, it was a truly memorable day yesterday afternoon for Ducati, an unforgettable day. The first time in their history, they joined MotoGP back in 2003, that they've locked out the top 5 places on the grid. Martin, Miller, Bagnaia, Zarco and Bastianini, the top 5 men in this race, coming up very shortly. Let's hear the pre-race thoughts of, I'm sure, a very happy Ducati boss, Davide Tardozzi, with Simon on the grid.
Yes, Davide. Incredible, with 5 Ducatis on the front, and I listened to all the debriefs, no complaints about the front end, which I've heard from a lot of other manufacturers' riders. What are your concerns going into the race? Is it rider, endurance, rear tyre? What are your worries?
Yeah, well, what you said, endurance will be tough for everybody. I think that the last 4 or 5 laps will be very tough for the riders on the body side, but yeah, they have to. The soft rear tire is much faster, so but they have to manage in the end of the race. While on the other hand, we have 5 Ducatis on the front, but I'm sure that Quartararo, Marquez, and the Aprilia guys will be very hard on riding style on the first 2-3 laps, try to claim the grid.
Thank you, Davide.
Yeah, thanks to Davide Tardozzi then, thanks to Simon. A big, big day. It could be an inter-Bologna battle, couldn't it, between those 5 Ducatis. Good to see there. Model and actor Taylor Kinney soaking up the pre-race atmosphere. A star of the Vampire Diaries and Chicago Fire as well. The Texas State Capitol building then. Love coming to this part of the world. It's such a great atmosphere. The American fans, they all love the MotoGP World Championship. They've soaked up what's been a fantastic weekend here so far, and we've potentially still got the best to come. 20 laps MotoGP coming up in about 17 minutes time. The kick-off at 1 p.m. local time.
Awful lot of Ducati support here as well. Of course, you mentioned Ducati Island that takes place here at Kota as we've been out in downtown Austin over the course of this weekend. An awful lot of Ducati shirts actually in downtown Austin. They've certainly got behind the Bologna Bullets, and they've certainly got the qualifying result that they were hoping for. The big question will be on that opening lap, will those 5 Ducatis still be 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5? The likes of Fabio Quartararo, the 2 Suzukis, Marc Marquez, and indeed this man, the World Championship leader Aleix Espargaro from further back on row 5. They know their biggest opportunity is to be aggressive on the opening lap and try and disrupt those Ducatis up at the front.
There's also a lot of Nicky Hayden fans still in the grandstands, where we saw there the famous 69 cap being worn by the American fans whenever we come to this part of the world. Of course, Nicky Hayden, the 2006 MotoGP World Champion, always holds a very special place in the hearts of everybody closely connected to the MotoGP World Championship. As we look at Luca Marini, very much soaking up the Texan vibe there with his big black Stetson on. As we look at Jorge Martin on pole position, What a qualifying record he's got so far this year. And right on cue, the king of COTA with work to do from 9th. I'm delighted to say Marc Marquez joins Simon Crafer on the grid.
Mark, with a brand new bike, not yet sorted, and everything you've been through, it looks like a tough weekend so far. But I think you've got the pace to go there at the front. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, I arrived here in American GP with many taps, but during the weekend we're getting better and better. Obviously, I already said on Thursday that the approach to win the race will be difficult, nearly impossible. But we will see. The race is really long, 20 laps. I need to manage many things, but yeah, we'll try to enjoy the race. This is my main target.
Good luck, Mark.
Yeah, great to hear from Marc Marquez ahead of this high-pressure race, the Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas, on a circuit, of course, which he calls his second home, pretty much. A 7 times race winner here. Can he make it an 8th wonder here today? Brad Binder, well, we always called him a Sunday man, and he really needs to find some sensational Sunday form today, as Lewis alluded to a few moments ago. It's been a horror show here in Austin for the KTM factory team, with Binder going from 17th place. He still believes that there's a top 10 salvageable here today, and who are we to argue with? We know how aggressive he can be. What about the factory Suzukis? Alex Rins came from 7th to 3rd last weekend in Argentina. Can he do the same again here today, or maybe go even better? The 2 Suzukis on the 3rd row. Let's hear from Team Suzuki X-Star boss Livio Supo with Simon.
Livio, it looks like this is going to be a really difficult race. So many riders with the pace for the podium, but I again think there's a chance for some blue on the podium. What do you think?
We have the same race position, start position than last week, and we finished 3rd, 4th. So let's hope we can repeat something like that. For sure, the Ducati will be fast, but also Mark is just behind us, but sure it will be fast. So it will be an interesting race, for sure. Good to watch on TV, less to watch on from the pit, but we will see.
Can you give us an idea what your concerns are about this race? I heard rider debriefs about when the temperature was high, a bit of front pushing from Joan, about also your bike is good at keeping that rear tire alive. What are you hoping for? What are you worried about?
Yeah, I think the biggest worry could be the front tire, so that we'll have to manage a little bit. But it will be the same for everybody, you know. So sure, our riders usually are good to manage this kind of thing. So it's, as I said before, it's a long race. I think we can do a nice job.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, Suzuki's, as always, look great in terms of their race pace. Just missing out again in qualifying. Joan Mir starting alongside Marc Marquez. Keep a very close eye on that feisty 3rd row, because Mir and Marquez are going to have to be aggressive to get themselves through the pack and not let those big group of Ducatis break away at the front. Delighted to see some sunshine poking through the cloud cover, which has dominated the early part of race day here in Austin. What are all those people doing down there in town? Come on, you should be here at the circuit of the Americas, shouldn't they? Let's pop down to hear from Monster Energy Yamaha team boss Maya Meregali. The world champion Fabio Quartararo, 6th on the grid. A poor weekend so far for his teammate Frankie Morbidelli in 19th. Down to you, Simon.
Yes, Mayo. We know Fabio always puts 100% in. Can you give us your thoughts on what you think is possible for him today?
If I have to say the truth, I'm much less confident that I was in Argentina, and we expect a really tough race. Here it will be crucial, the start, because it's very difficult to overtake us here, especially rather than other circuit. So he knows, and for sure he will put his 100% as always. But also we saw that everything can happen watching a Moto2 race, so he also has to use his mental to maybe decide to maybe wait and do not take a lot of risk, because when the race is tough anyway, you have to be able to manage.
Mayo, best of luck today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Mario Meregali. We're hearing those two words banded together quite a lot, aren't we? Start and crucial. We've heard it from Repsol Honda, we've heard it from Yamaha, we've heard it from Suzuki's. A high-quality third row of the grid with the only two riders that have won in MotoGP around this famous Kota course, Alex Rins and Marc Marquez. Is there some late tyre changes going on here then for one of the Team Suzuki X-Star riders? Certainly got a jog on those boys, coming with some fresh rubber to the grid.
Tyre choice so crucial, as you mentioned. There were one or two riders who were flirting with the possibility of running the medium rear tyre. We're expecting the majority to go on the soft, and it really will play into the hands of the likes of Enea Bastianini on the second row. We expect to have plenty of rear tyre life at the end of this Grand Prix. He is the rider that many have identified as the prime threat from the second row of the grid. Suzuki so often so good at managing their tyres in the back end of a Grand Prix, but without the same level of drop this year with the Michelins, that's negated their advantage ever so slightly.
Coming up very, very shortly, a very special grid ceremony here to mark the, well, not just to mark the 500th racing together collaboration of Dorna Sports, the FIM, Urch and the MSMA. Some legends on the grid there, aren't they? MotoGP legend and Kota ambassador Kevin Schwantz, the 1993 500cc world champion. On his left there, Freddie Spencer, the 1985 250cc and 500cc world champion. How on earth did Freddie do that back in the day as well? And former 125cc world champion Alessandro Gramini there as well. We're about to hear the American national anthem though very, very shortly. The traditional new way to kick off proceedings here, the racing together, but we'll pause now as the American national anthem starts.
The colours of the United States of America are members of the Austin Travis County EMS Honor Guard. Please remain standing, singing our national anthem. Shonda Monique Barnes.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
An amazing rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, the aerial display now, the jet display from the Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. What a way to continue the countdown here, as we're just moments away from round 4 in the 2022 MotoGP World Championship here. The Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas will pop quickly back down to pit lane. Simon Crafar with Michelin Motorsport manager Piero Taramasso.
Piero, please tell us what you think is going to happen in the race, choice-wise, but also over the distance.
Yeah, for sure the race will be a nice race because they can push from the beginning to the end. You know, tires are very consistent. The choice is everybody with hard front and soft rear. Only Miguel and Raul, they have a medium on the rear because they gave them more stability. But for sure it will be a nice race with a good lap time, very consistent until the end.
Thank you, Piero.
Wow, there's some proper American legends down on this special grid ceremony here today. When they talk about the word legend, sometimes it's thrown around a little bit too much, but this man, a proper, genuine motorcycle racing legend, the original King, Kenny Roberts. A fitting accolade for King Kenny Roberts, of course. He was one of the superstars of the history of the MotoGP World Champs. We've seen Freddie Spencer, we've seen Kevin Schwantz, and we're all getting set for this Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas. A grid ceremony which sort of takes an extra meaning here, doesn't it, I think, with it being the 500th race, racing together of that unique collaboration between Dorna Sports, the FIM, IRTA and the MSMA. We're getting sweaty palms, we're getting anxious and nervous in the commentary box. What's it like down on the grid then? As the 3-minute board comes up, the safety car pulls away then and starts that 41-metre climb up into the first corner. He'll be leading the way in about 5 minutes time here when the Red Bull Grand Prix of the Americas gets underway.
And without giving any spoilers away, there was some action, some drama at turn 1 in the earlier Moto2 race. It does tend to happen here, of course, a long uphill run to a very tight left-hander. It can be a bit of a bottleneck. Sometimes you can get caught up on the outside with someone else's accident. So with those riders coming through from the third row, expect them to be charging on the brakes, particularly Fabio Quartararo, who makes up a lot of his time on the brakes. Expect those Ducatis to come under threat very, very early.
This man has been known as the undisputed King of Kota. Will his reign continue? Predicted race pace then around the sort of mid to high 203s. It's very windy here today in Austin. And of course, 20 laps, a punishing race for the body and for the tyres. And everybody then, certainly at the front of the grid, going for the hard front, soft rear tyre. The helicopter shots there, grabbing these magnificent, spectacular overhead shots of this stunning circuit of the Americas in Austin. 5.5 kilometers, 20 corners, one of the most demanding tracks on the Grand Prix calendar. An old Ducati lockout then of the front row of the grid. Pecco Bagnaia, the pre-season favourite, starts third, his first front row start of 2022. Flanked alongside his Australian teammate Jack Miller. Will it be a